Hello and welcome to another episode of the Better in Business podcast. I'm Jennifer Vanderwau, stepping in for Jeannie Savage as your co-host. In today's episode, I want to talk about something that has been prompted by a pattern that I'm seeing quite repeatedly with many business owners in the recent times. Many who unknowingly are actually putting their business at risk because they don't fully understand who is allowed to do what when it comes to their finances. Firstly, I just want to say this isn't a technical or regulatory deep dive. It's a conversation about risk because most business owners facing this challenge aren't trying to do the wrong thing. But good intentions don't protect you when something goes really wrong.
You've tuned into the Better in Business podcast, and I'm your host, Jeannie Savage. I'm a multi-award winning business veteran and head of the Strategic Bookkeeper Network. My network of strategic bookkeepers is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs do better in business. This podcast aims to challenge your thinking. If you're not thinking the right way, how can you act the right way? Each episode will dive into key drivers of success, which I also call the rules of the game. Learn the rules and play to win. Let's go. I like to start every episode by reminding you that it is globally recognized that pillar number one for success is up-to-date, accurate bookkeeping, which is the only way you can see how your business is performing in terms of profit and cash. If your books aren't right up to date, visit betterinbusiness.global, drop me a line and I'll connect you with a certified strategic bookkeeper. Fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper. Bookkeeping is a cost, whereas strategic bookkeeping is an investment that averages a 10x return on the fees.
To start, I want to talk about the false sense of safety, the things that are common beliefs for many business owners. I hear so often people saying or really reiterating these points. They really believe that bookkeeping is purely administrative or that their software will keep everything safe and compliant. And then if something goes wrong, that their accountant will catch it or it will be seen at year end. Now, sometimes this is true, but I just want to point out that what's far more common is that these issues actually sit quietly in the background, sometimes for months or even for years. And by the time they're actually discovered, some of that damage can't be undone. Across many countries, responsibility for financial accuracy will actually sit with the business owner, even when someone else is doing the work. Let's look at a real client example. And I really want this to highlight why small mistakes can actually really matter, and they can also become something much bigger over time. So I worked with a construction company. It was a husband and wife team. The wife was handling the admin side of the business, and I'm going to call her Shay. At the time that this issue was discovered, they actually had an internal employee handling all the bookkeeping and admin. This was someone that they trusted. There were no obvious red flags, and Shay had no formal training and so didn't feel empowered to question anything either. Over time, it was identified that tax was actually being applied incorrectly to transfers of money between accounts. These transfers, they were not real income or expenses for the business. Now, this sounds minor, but I want you to imagine in your own business, how often do you move money around? Moving money to savings accounts, to save, to pay for bills. And then imagine if tax was added on top or took a chunk out of each of those transfers. So while it sounds minor, it really wasn't. By the time this issue was actually discovered, only part of the error could actually be corrected. Some of it was actually too old to fix under the local tax rules. So this one issue for this client resulted in tens of thousands of lost money, required extensive cleanup work, involved multiple professionals, and consumed a huge amount of the business owner's time and energy. And this is most important, perhaps, that the issue wasn't missed because professionals were incompetent. It surfaced late because no one was reviewing the work closely enough or often enough. And there was a delay in tax years being resolved. So they were a bit behind in having things lodged. Sometimes too, once an error actually becomes historic, it's not guaranteed that it can be repaired, even by the best professionals. There are time limits often on the things that can be resolved. Why my accountant will catch it or it will be solved at year end just isn't enough. Accountants and tax advisors play a critical role in every business. But in most businesses, they are not in the file weekly and most often not even monthly. They rely on the data that's being presented to them to be accurate once it reaches them. So when something is coded incorrectly over a long period of time, it can pass through without being obvious until time limits, audits, or reviews expose it. And at that time, that cost isn't just financial. It's stress, distraction, and loss of confidence in your numbers. And even the worst of worst cases could lead to personal debt and loss of your business and everything that you've built. So let's look at, what does cheap versus qualified support look like? What is the real distinction? Because really, it isn't about price. It's about accountability. A qualified, properly recognized financial professional will always operate within a framework. They'll have a defined scope of work. They'll have professional oversight. They often have continuing education obligations and accountability if something goes wrong. Most are also insured against errors and mistakes. Whereas unqualified or unchecked support might appear cost effective, but if errors go unnoticed long enough, the business owner absorbs the full impact. Not the software, not the service provider, but you. What else is another layer of an area that's related but linked to this? The other thing I want to talk about today is offshore and unqualified work. Where does the risk actually sit with these areas? Because many business owners want to use offshore or lower cost support. And sometimes in the right structure, that can actually work. But it's important to remember that the risk isn't geography. The risk is a lack of oversight and understanding of local rules. In many countries, there are clear boundaries around who can provide tax-related services, what level of qualifications or registrations are required, and who carries responsibility when something goes wrong. When work is done by someone who isn't qualified, registered, or properly supervised under the local tax law, that risk doesn't disappear. It transfers straight back to the business owner. It will often stay invisible until there's a problem. Another layer of risk that many business owners don't consider is around employment and contractor risk or employment classification. When you engage someone directly, particularly someone who is offshore, you may be unintentionally creating an employment relationship under your own local employment laws. In many jurisdictions, that can trigger obligations around minimum pay, social security and superannuation equivalents, leave entitlements, and employment compliance. A common assumption is that location removes responsibilities, but in many cases, control and dependency matter more than the geography. Like financial errors, these issues usually surface late, and once they surface, they're often harder or more expensive to be resolved. So what can you as business owners do to protect yourselves. The good news is you don't need to become an expert. You just need to have the right checks and people in place. So if you have an internal bookkeeper or a finance team member, ensure that their work is reviewed regularly by a qualified professional. Make continuing education part of their role so they stay current with changes that are affecting your business. Be clear on what tasks are administrative and which require professional oversight under the local rules. If you're engaging an external contractor or bookkeeping service, check whether they are registered, licensed, or recognised by the relevant authority in your country. Check whether their registration has conditions or limits. If they are not registered, ask who supervises their work and ensure that the person is qualified and accountable. The key question here is always going to be the same. Who is responsible if something goes wrong? If you can't answer that clearly, then that is a sign that you need to pause and perhaps investigate. So now I want to really reframe the decision. This isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about reducing risk. Qualified financial support isn't an overhead. It is protection for what you, the business owner, have built. Strategic, properly trained bookkeepers don't just process data. They question, review, and catch issues early while they're still fixable. If you've been listening to this today and you're unsure how your finances are being handled or how confident you are in the manner they're being handled, the best first step is to not panic, but to take some steps to gain some clarity. One of the most effective ways to reduce risk is to engage a certified strategic bookkeeper and complete what we call a business health check, also known as fresh eyes on your file. For a relatively small fee, this process will give you an independent review of the accuracy of your financial file, visibility over any risks or red flags, and clarity on whether cleanup is required or if your systems are sound. This is not about judgment. This is about understanding what's really happening in your numbers while the issues are still manageable. Certified strategic bookkeepers operate internationally, and you can connect with them through the Better in Business directory. The confidence that you can have in your numbers, it isn't about perfection. It's about protection. If you found today's conversation helpful, I'd really love it if you would share it with another business owner who may not realize the risks sitting quietly behind their numbers. We appreciate you being a part of the Better in Business community, and we will see you in the next episode.
I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. I would love to help you start doing better in business right now by giving you a free little ebook. It's a how-to guide. It's called The 7 Deadly Cash Flow Sins. And also I've developed a business health check for you. It's super high value. Both are available at betterinbusiness.global. If you would like to fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper to start enjoying a return on investment and get the support you need to optimize your business cash and profit and time well, simply visit betterinbusiness.global, drop me a line and I'll connect you with a certified strategic bookkeeper near you. I'll see you in the next episode.